Hello and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the only board game review show to serve two non-consecutive terms in the White House. Just squished Benjamin Harrison right there in the middle. Anyway, today I want to tell you all about a game called War of Kings from Rain Studios. War of Kings, 2 to 6 players will essentially vie to become the most powerful kingdom in the realm. It's a medieval war game, area control game, resource management game. First of all, you can pick from a number of different houses that look surprisingly like a certain TV show and book series that we all know and love. For instance, you can be the Yellow Deer, you can be the Gray Wolf, or you can be the Blue Lion! Now, the game starts, you get a town and you get a village. And towns, villages, and cities are kind of the backbone of the game. You want to capture these things, you want to found these things, you want to exploit these things, you want to defend these things. So these settlements are very, very important in the game. Now, the first thing that happens is the construction phase. You're going to collect gold based on the settlements you have in different places. Then what you're going to do is the first player is going to roll for resources. And these are colored die that when they come up, you look and you see where you have your settlements, and if they match the colors that are on the resource die, the colors of the resources there, you collect those resources. If you have certain kinds of settlements, you may also get a secondary resource as well, so you can make a lot of resources this way. You're going to use those resources and gold to upgrade villages to towns, towns to cities. You can also do 3 levels of fortifications, kind of, you know, an earthworks, wooden fortifications to a stone fortress, and then finally to a castle, and they become progressively easier to defend the more powerful the fortification is. Next is the event phase. Now, when you roll for the event, you take an event die and you take a colored resource die. You roll them together. If the event die shows an axe, you don't care about the resource die, and what that means is you draw a card from the Marauder deck. Marauders are pirates that come on the board and cause all sorts of problems. You can kind of screw over your opponents by putting the armies next to them. So Marauders can be very deadly in this game. If, on the other hand, you don't roll that, if you roll kind of a V for village, a C for city, or T for town, and you have one of those in that color, you get to draw an event card. And event cards are pretty cool. They can help with battles, they can help with gaining resources or gold. They just generally can do fun things in the game. So you want to get those event cards, ideally. Next, you're going to have movement. Now, you're moving your armies, and your armies in this game, there's really no variation. They're just these little cardboard tokens. They move into the different territories. And you try to move in there, and you have to kind of conquer these territories in order to build your settlements there. But you may also want to move your armies against your enemies. And in that case, you're going to prepare for battle. But first of all, when you move into some of these undiscovered countries, as Shakespeare would say, you have to explore. And when you explore, you roll the purple battle bonus die, which is a die you use in battle, and you roll that along with a colored die. Then what's going to happen is you compare the symbol on the battle die to the color. And there's a chart in the back of the rule book that tells you what happens with each symbol with each color. And anything could happen. You could run into marauders that you have to fight. You could gain resources. You could gain gold. You could find a new village that's waiting to be annexed by you. There's all sorts of things that come up. So there's a real kind of 4X element here with regard to the exploration. It's very, very, very interesting. After you've explored, you move on to battle resolution. Essentially, you're going to look at the number of armies you have, the number of the armies the defender has. If any of you are in a situation where you have a fortress there, that can help you out. You're going to roll a certain amount of die, and you may get more die if you got more armies. You roll the die, and then it's kind of just simple attrition. Die roll, score hits, you take armies off. Each army has, I think, 3 hit points, if I remember correctly, that they can take in damage. So you go back and forth, and who's ever left standing wins. There are options to retreat as well, and you can heal hit points later. Finally, you're going to check to make sure all of your armies are in supply. Now, you can't have too many armies on the board, at least not for long, because you have to have the settlements to support them. Villages can only support armies that are in their same region. Towns and cities can support more armies in different parts of the board. So it's important to remember you don't have too many armies that you can't support. What you're trying to gain in this game is achievement points. You get achievements through military victory when you're conquering other settlements. Also, if you're constructing certain kinds of settlements, at certain times you will gain achievement points. There are also kind of achievement cards that will come up that you can claim. You know, if you create an empire. And you create empires because when you conquer your enemy's cities, you don't replace their colored city with your colored city. It remains their colored city. You just put an ownership token there, and culturally it remains part of theirs. Meaning if you're not defending it and they move in, they can just take it over. They don't have to fight for it. It's theirs. But if you have an empire, meaning you have two different colored cities, and you have a variation in the sizes of cities, then you get a card that gives you a certain amount of achievement points. Also, you know, person with the most gold, the most armies, different ways you can gain achievement points throughout the game. The first player to reach 13 achievement points wins the game. That's a standard game. You can play for less or more, depending on how long you want the game to be. So, what do I think here of War of Kings? First of all, let me say, this is not really a fantasy game. I kind of looked at it and I thought it might be fantasy. It's more of a medieval game. The fantasy theme really doesn't come through, but a medieval one certainly does. So I really would hesitate to call this a fantasy game. It's more like kind of generic medieval warfare 4X game. That's not a big deal at all. I think it's a great theme. I really think it fits well. But just know that going in. It's not so much fantasy as it is just kind of generic medieval warfare here. Now, you're looking at this game, and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, this looks like a war game. I mean, it's called War of Kings, right? And yet, while there are aspects of warfare in it, and war is an important part of the game, I would hesitate to call this a straight war game. It's not a war game, really. It's a game of resource management and, you know, how to best use your resources to build things. And combat's important, but it's no more important than some of these other things you're doing in the game. This is fundamentally a game of resource management more than anything. Like I said, there's area control, there's war, but resource management really hits it home. In fact, if there is a game that I can say this reminded me of, maybe more than any other game out there, I'd say Settlers of Catan. It really has a Settlers of Catan feel, the way you're rolling for those resources, and when they come up, everybody checks to see if they can get it, and they get it, and victory is dependent on that. There's also those achievement cards that come up, which again is kind of like Settlers of Catan. There's a major difference, though, because this is Settlers of Catan with combat. And I don't want to just reduce it to that. I don't want to say it's just a Settlers of Catan clone with combat. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it does kind of feel like that in many, many ways. There are a lot of cool things going on here. I really like the exploration. I think that's cool. I like the 4X aspect of this game. Generally, I like combat in the game. I thought that flowed well. I thought it was fun. I thought that was interesting. I like the ways you can kind of screw over your opponents with the Marauder cards. That was interesting, and it's kind of fun having that NPC in the game. Component quality was good. I thought it didn't blow me away. It wasn't spectacular, but I really liked those the settlements. I thought they were cool, and how you could put the little rings of the fortifications around that. I thought that was actually very, very cool. You know, the armies, just little cardboard tokens. I would have liked to have seen minis there as well, but it is what it is. And good components. Didn't blow me away, but good. The resource tokens were kind of like these little long, they look like sticks of gum. I thought that was just kind of weird. You know, it almost seemed like that would have been better served with something a little bit smaller. You know, maybe, I don't know, either chits or some kind of, you know, coins or something like that. Maybe that would have worked, but I don't know. I mean, what it is isn't bad, just a little different. I gotta say, all things considered, I really liked War of Kings. I thought it was a fun game. Thought it was an interesting game. Gives you, you know, a good experience for the time you're playing it. It says, you know, on the box, you know, minimal setup time, and that's true. It doesn't take very long to set up, and it doesn't take too terribly long to play. All things considered, for what the game is, it doesn't wear out its welcome. Right? It's not so long that you're thinking, oh, let's get this thing over with. I enjoyed it. I think War of Kings is a fun, good, strategic game. Gives you good options, tough choices, and it's just a good experience all the way around. Really liked War of Kings. So the recommendation for the discriminating gamer for War of Kings is buy it! Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. Please, we ask you once again, please leave a comment here on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, on thediscriminatinggamer.com, and please, please, please like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. We are The Discriminating Gamer, the Grover Cleveland of board game review shows.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
It's the armor that keeps me from getting pierced by arrows.
That's the arrows of metaphorical arrows or real arrows?
I'm going to say both.